Thank you.
All right. So I'll share screen now. Let me see. Okay. I believe everyone has gotten the Scrum guide, yeah? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have gotten.
One that sent the Scrum guide. Why did you stop on your Agile Scrum lectures or training with Emmanuel? What was the last class? What was the last class, please?
Can we respond, please?
I just need to know where you've gotten to with Emmanuel, so it guides my Scrum guide training.
I think we're on the 12 principles. I don't know if I'm that correct. Can somebody else confirm that? We're on the last, this first 12.
The principles.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's fine. So I'll just run through the Scrum guide. Originally, you should take this after you're done with Emmanuel's entire class, because Emmanuel's class will give you an understanding of the Scrum guide. It will be easier for you to understand the Scrum guide, but I'll just run through the Scrum guide, and then if you have your notes and pens with you, you can just take down points where I tell you to note, because they definitely come out in the exams no matter what. Okay, let's begin. Let's just go straight to the Scrum definition. It's a lightweight framework that helps people, teams, and organizations generate value through adaptive solutions for complex problems. So, and the Scrum requires that a Scrum Master fosters an environment where a product owner orders the work for a complex problem into a product backlog. Product owner, product backlog. Product owner, product backlog. The Scrum team turns a selection of the work into an increment of value during a sprint. And then the Scrum team and its stakeholders inspect the results and adjust for the next sprint. Then you repeat again for each sprint. Scrum is simple, try it as is, and determine if its philosophy, theory, and structure help to achieve goals and create value. We'll skim through this and go to Scrum Theory. Okay. Scrum is founded on empiricism and lean thinking. Empiricism.
Your audio is very low. Is it me?
Oh,
or is
okay.
the audio okay?
I think it's your end.
Audio is okay. It's okay.
Oh, okay, because I'm on like 88%. Okay. So, hi, Etiosa. That's Etiosa, right? How you doing?
Okay. I'm fine, very fine, thank you.
Great. Scrum employs an iterative incremental approach to optimize predictability and to control risk. I will go straight to, okay, yeah. Scrum combines 4 formal events for inspection and adaptation within a containing event. Have you done Scrum events? Have you done Scrum events?
No.
Oh, okay. So this might be a bit tricky. Okay, so note this. Scrum combines 4 formal events for inspection and adaptation within a containing event, the sprint. The containing event is the sprint, and the 4 formal events are sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospectives. Please note this. There's a containing event, which is called the sprint. And then there are 4 formal events that is employed for inspection and adaptation within the sprint. And these are the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. These events worked because they implement the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. You need to note the empirical Scrum pillars. transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So let's go to transparency. Transparency, the emergent process and work must be visible to those performing the work as well as those receiving the work. So Scrum says that you must be transparent. So when you're working as a Scrum team, whatever you're working on or whatever you're unclear about, whatever your impediments are, must be transparent to your entire Scrum team. For inspection, we have events where you inspect your work. So you work in a sprint. Say, for example, we're working on a pen that has a cover, a container, the ink, the pen ink inside, and then the bottom. So how Scrum works is that we work in sprints. Say this sprint is for 2 weeks, and we're trying to work on the cover of the pen, not the entire pen, just the cover. So I'm working on it for just 2 weeks. We have a sprint planning. So I'm going to Scrum Events now. Please note, we have a sprint planning. At the sprint planning, the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the developers, these are the Scrum team members. We are known as the Scrum team members. The Scrum Master, the product owner, and the developers all sit together at the sprint planning with the product backlog. The product backlog is already available, produced by the product owner, and then they have different tasks on the product backlog to work on. Now, because we want to work on the cover of the pen, we pick tasks from the product backlog in relation to the cover of the pen. Developers do that, to pick tasks, and then we discuss, this is the sprint goal. The sprint goal is the cover of the pen, and then we discuss on how we're going to achieve the pen. The Scrum Master facilitates the events and ensures that the sprint planning happens, all these events happen. That's the job of the Scrum Master. And then everybody's in agreement. And the product owner is there to also give advice, clarity on the product backlog. Say maybe there's a task that is unclear. The product owner is there since he runs the product backlog to tell them, okay, this is it. This is why this task is there. And then we have a sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is in relation to the sprint. So we take out tasks. Since we are working on the cover of the pen, we take out tasks from the product backlog in relation to the cover of the pen that would make us achieve the cover of the pen and put it in the sprint backlog. So the sprint backlog is where we are working from for the sprint. The product backlog is the entire, the document that shows everything we're working on for the product itself. However, the sprint backlog is past sprint. So in this sprint backlog, we're working on this task in order to achieve creating the cover of the pen. The sprint planning is done when we've all agreed on the sprint goal and the task. Then we move to the daily scrum. So say we start the sprint planning on a Monday and we have our meeting, and then we move to the daily scrum. The daily scrum is 15 minutes every day, inspection and adaptation. What am I doing today to achieve the sprint goal? What are the impediments? So developers are meant to attend the meeting. It's compulsory for developers to attend. The Scrum Master only ensures that this event happens. If the Scrum Master is working on a task, then he attends as a developer. Or developers, the daily scrum or daily stand-up is meant for the developers. They come together and they tell each other, this is what we're working on, and it's within 15 minutes. This is the impediments. This is what I'm working on next for today. This is what I achieved yesterday, and then you round up on it. It doesn't mean that during the day you can't reach out to each other and discuss. No, it doesn't mean that you can't, but the daily scrum is compulsory at a particular time, at a particular place, every day of the week. And then we move to the sprint review. So let's say the sprint is for 2 weeks, yeah? The sprint review will happen on maybe the Friday of the following week. The sprint review is another opportunity to inspect and adapt. The stakeholders, these are people that outside the Scrum team come together. And then let's see what the Scrum team has done. The product owner comes in with Scrum Master and developers, and then they produce, this is what we've done. This is the cover. you wanted it in blue, you wanted you didn't want a cover on top of the cover, you didn't want it closed, you wanted a space, there's a description that's already been given, that's already in the product backlog, and this is what you've been able to achieve. And then everybody looks at it and say, okay, yeah, it's good to go, or no, why don't we change it to yellow instead of blue? It's an opportunity to inspect and adapt and say, okay, make changes that are necessary. If not, we just move next to the next sprint goal. And then we have a sprint retrospective where just Scrum team members alone come together. It could be a laid back event. Say maybe you guys go for dinner or lunch after the sprint review. You sit together, laid back event, everybody's talking. Okay, so what's happened in the last sprint that we don't want it to be repeated? So John delayed our work. We don't know why. And can John make adjustments so that it doesn't delay our work in the next sprint? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What are we doing well that should continue? What should stop? What should we now adapt? That is what the sprint retro is for. So we have the sprint planning where the Scrum team members come together and determine what the sprint goal is and pick out tasks from the product backlog into the sprint backlog for the sprints. And then we have the daily Scrum 15 minutes time boxed event where all Scrum team members, or rather all developers, tell each other, okay, this is what we're doing next. This is what is impeding my work. This is what I'm doing today to achieve the sprint goal. This is what I did before. Things. Then we have the sprint review where you present, basically everybody comes together, external stakeholders too, and then look at what we've done for the sprint and see if it's good to go, if we can move on to the next one. Then we have a retro, which is just for Scrum team members alone to talk about how their work went during the last sprint and what can be done better. Okay, I hope we're clear. I'm not losing anybody.
You're clear.
Okay, thank you. So I will move to Scrum Values. Over time, you would understand the Scrum Guide better, especially when Emmanuel has finished with his class. This Scrum Guide, I usually prefer that you take it after you're done with the entire Agile class. But it's good that you're taking it now. It gives you an idea of what to expect. Okay, Scrum Values. FROC, that's focus, respect, openness, commitment, and courage. You need to note these 5. These Scrum values are very important. You would encounter them in at least 3 or 4 questions, certainly, or more than. So you need to note the Scrum values. We call it FROC: focus, respect, openness, commitment, and courage. The Scrum team commits to achieving its goals and to supporting each other. Their primary focus is on the work of the sprint to make the best possible progress towards these goals. The Scrum team and its stakeholders are open about the work and the challenges. Scrum team members respect each other to be capable, independent people and are respected as such by the people with whom they work. The Scrum team members have the courage to do the right thing, to work on tough problems. So you are committed. As a Scrum team member, you are committed to the work. You're committed to achieving the product, the items on the product backlog in order to achieve the bigger picture, which is the product. You're focused on the task. You are open. So you are telling each other the truth about your situations. Oh, I'm not meeting this. Oh, I'm not clear about this. Oh, this is what I think is the best idea to use. This is the way I think should go. Then respect. There's mutual respect amongst everybody. There's no senior BA, there's no senior developer. Everybody's just a developer, Scrum Master, product owner. We're just Scrum team members working together to achieve a particular goal. And then you have courage. Courage to work on tough problems. I've encountered some things that I've never tried before, but you know, when you dip your legs into it is when you know if you can do it. And then sometimes you discover that you can't. Sometimes it's tough and then you seek for help, but you have courage to actually take that step. These values give direction to the Scrum team with regard to their work, actions, and behavior. The decisions that are made, the steps taken, and the way Scrum is used should reinforce these values, not diminish or undermine them. The Scrum team members learn and explore the values as they work with the Scrum events and artifacts. When these values are embodied by the Scrum team and the people they work with, the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation come to life, building trust. Okay, the Scrum team members. The Scrum team unit of Scrum, the fundamental unit of Scrum is a small team of people called the Scrum team. Consists of one Scrum Master, one product owner, and developers. Please note this: one Scrum Master, one product owner, and developers. Within a Scrum team, there are no sub-teams or hierarchies. Like I said before, there's no senior developer, there's no junior developer, there's no sub-team, there's no tester, there's no business analyst. Everybody's called a developer. But you know your expertise and skills, and you know the tasks that you're going to pick, and everybody's responsible for each other and accountable to each other. It is a cohesive unit of professionals focused on one objective at a time, the product goal. So everybody knows that we are committed to the product goal, we are focused on the product goal, we respect each other, we have courage to take on tough problems and speak up when it's necessary. And then we are open, we are transparent. Okay, Scrum teams are cross-functional, meaning the members have all the skills necessary to create value each sprint. They are also self-managing, meaning they internally decide who does what, when, and how. So you don't expect that the product owner decides this is the person who is going to do this, or the Scrum Master micromanages the team. Absolutely not. Everybody's matured, everybody's a professional, you know what to do, you know what to do, right thing. The Scrum Master is just supposed to facilitate the event and ensure that the impediments that developers have noticed that are in their way are cleared. Okay. Okay. The Scrum team is small enough to remain nimble and large enough to complete significant work within a sprint. Please note, typically 10 or fewer people. So not more than 10 in a Scrum team. Typically 10 or fewer. It could be less than 10, but not more than 10. Please note this. In general, we have found that smaller teams communicate better and are more productive. This is actually true in real life. When you're in a smaller team, people can easily communicate. If you're in a bigger team, some people might be quiet and have great ideas, but don't know how to speak up within a large crowd. So smaller teams communicate better. This is what Scrum. Okay. If Scrum should consider reorganizing into each focused on the same product. So they share the same product goal, the same product backlog, and the same product owner. They could have different Scrum Masters in each team, but they have just one product owner. Sprints, they can all decide to work on different things. However, they must have the same product goal. All of us are working towards that particular goal, and we're all taking tasks into our sprint backlog from just one product backlog, and we have only one product owner. The Scrum team is responsible for all product-related activities from stakeholder collaboration, verification, maintenance, operation, experimentation, research, and development. The entire Scrum team is responsible for everything in relation to the product goal. Everything, including testing, everything. And anything else that might be required. They are structured and empowered by the organization to manage their own work, working in sprints. Sprints means that you're working in bits. So you're not taking, so unlike waterfall where I present to you, I want this kind of pen developed here. And then I go to design and then production. And at the end of the day, I present the entire pen to you. In Scrum, we work in bits. So we're working on the cover this week or this sprint, which is for 2 weeks. The next sprint, we're working on the bottom. The next sprint, we're working on the back, the entire container. The next sprint, we're working on the ink before we bring it together. So there's a chance to make changes when you're working in bits like that. Unlike when you've told me to produce a pen and I go and produce a pen and then I'm showing you the entire pen and then you now want to start making changes and then we probably have to go back and start again. But Scrum allows you to make changes within sprints. Okay. The entire Scrum team is accountable for creating a valuable, useful increment every sprint. Please note. The entire Scrum team is accountable for creating a valuable, useful increment every sprint. Scrum defines 3 specific accountabilities within the Scrum team: the developers, the product owner, and the Scrum Master. So if you see a question that says, what are the accountabilities or responsibilities of the Scrum team? And then you see software developer, you see developer, you see Scrum Master, you see business analyst. Just know that the responsibilities or the accountabilities, the 3 roles that we know in Scrum are developers, product owner, and the Scrum Master. The developers can consist of skills and expertise towards the sprint goal that will achieve the sprint goal. So maybe this product goal requires a business analyst, a tester, a software developer, back-end developer, front-end developer. You know, we're not known as those titles. We're just known as developers, but everybody's matured enough to know their task and what they are working towards. So we go to developers. Developers are the people in the Scrum team that are committed to creating an aspect of a usable increment each sprint. And is everybody following me?
Yes, I'm following you.
Or am I losing anyone at all?
Yes, I'm following you. I am.
Is everybody following the Scrum team that are committed? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Developers are the people in the Scrum team that are committed to creating an aspect of a usable increment each sprint. And they are accountable for creating a plan for the sprint. So they create a plan for the sprint backlog, instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done. Over time, you understand what definition of done is. On the surface, definition of done is, say, this is when we can conclude that we have achieved our aim. So if the cover looks like this particular design is of this particular material, is of this particular color that has been determined from the start, that's our definition of done. So if you make it yellow instead of blue, you have not achieved the definition of done. Over time, I think Manu will be able to break down the definition of done for you, but that's what it is on the surface value. So instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done, adapting their plan each day toward the sprint goal. So ensuring that whatever work they are doing is towards achieving the sprint goal, and holding each other accountable as professionals. Everybody is responsible for everybody. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team, and is accountable for effective backlog management, developing and explicitly communicating the product backlog, creating and clearly communicating product backlog items, ordering product backlog items, and ensuring that the product backlog is transferable and understood. So the product owner's business is the backlog, ensuring that everybody understands what it is. It's the product goal is clear. The product backlog is good. The product owner to ask. The product owner may delegate the responsibility to others. Regardless, the product owner can nominate a proxy product owner responsible. So if something goes wrong or something is unclear, the product owner is responsible. He's the one who nominated the proxy product owner. He's allowed to. However, so sometimes he might be missing a meeting and then sends the proxy product owner to attend, or is unavailable, the proxy product owner takes over. He is, however, responsible and accountable for the product backlog. So for product owners to succeed, the entire organization must respect their decisions. These decisions are visible in the content and ordering of the product backlog through the inspectable increment of the sprint review. The product owner is one person. Please note this. The product owner is one person, not a committee. The product owner may represent the needs of many stakeholders in the product backlog. So a lot of stakeholders might have given their inputs into producing the product backlog. A lot management, external stakeholders, subject matter experts, domain matter experts could have given their inputs into putting together the product backlog. The product owner is, however, just one person and is responsible for the product backlog. Those wanting to change the product backlog can only do so by trying to convince the product owner. So the management gives him the entire rights, because most of the time the product owner is usually a subject matter expert, someone who understands this product, understands how it's done. Okay, let's move to Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. They do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory and practice, both within the Scrum team and organization. So you understand that as a Scrum Master, you're responsible for teaching Scrum. Let everybody, coaching Scrum rather, let everybody understand what Scrum is, what Scrum values are, how Scrum works, and ensure that everyone is following through with the framework. So the Scrum Master serves the Scrum team in several ways, coaching the team members in self-management and cross-functionality, helping the Scrum team focus on creating high-value increments that meet the definition of done, causing the removal of impediments to the Scrum team's progress, ensuring that all Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within the time box. So we'll go to time box for those events, but please note that Scrum Masters ensure that Scrum events take place, that they are productive, positive, and kept within the time box. They ensure that they coach team members and the entire organization really about Scrum and how it's adapted. And so it's not just a one-off thing. That sometimes that you can send in notification that the daily Scrum is at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. tomorrow morning for every day for the next sprint. And people don't, if developers don't show up on time, you have to remember to coach them, remind them all the time. And developers are professionals, so expectedly, they're supposed to adhere to it. But sometimes you have to be on your toes to ensure that those events happen and they adhere to the time box. The Scrum Master serves the product owner in several ways, helping find techniques for effective product goal definition and product backlog management, helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items, helping establish empirical product planning for a complex environment, and facilitating stakeholder collaboration as requested or needed. And then the Scrum Master serves the organization in several ways, including leading and coaching the organization in its Scrum adoption, planning and advising Scrum implementations within the organization, helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work, and removing barriers between stakeholders and Scrum teams. The work for the Scrum Master is really cut out for them. Okay, if you have any questions, you can just drop in the chat and I'll see if I can. I think I have just about 16 minutes. Okay. Scrum Events. The sprint is a container for all other events. I mentioned this earlier. The sprint is not an event. It is not an event. It's a container for all other events, meaning that all other events happen within the sprint. Each event in Scrum is a formal opportunity to inspect and adapt Scrum artifacts. Remember this keyword, formal opportunity, which means that there are other ways where you can inspect and adapt. There are other avenues. Like I said, if you have daily Scrum at 11 a.m. in the morning, and you've already stated what you're going to do and your impediments, and 2-3 hours down the line, you discover another impediment, you don't have to wait till the following day at the daily Scrum to mention it. No, most of the time you have a team group or a group on maybe WhatsApp or something where you guys can reach out to each other and say, okay, this is what is happening. I just discovered this bug in the system and it needs to be fixed. Tola, can you get on it and all that so that I can continue working? So you don't have to wait until the daily scrum. But the daily scrum is just a formal event where you state all this. These events are specifically designed to enable the transparency required. Failure to operate any events as prescribed results in lost opportunities to inspect and adapt. Events are used in Scrum to create regularity and to minimize the need for meetings not defined in Scrum. Optimally, all events are held at the same time and place to reduce complexity. Please note this. All events are held at the same time and place to reduce complexity. This question will come out in 3 different ways in 3 different questions. Okay. The sprints are the heartbeat of Scrum, where ideas are turned into value. They are fixed length events of 1 month or less. So a sprint could be a month or it could be less. So depending on what the sprint goal is, there's some sprint goal that could be achieved in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, or in 1 month. So a sprint is usually 1 month or less. So in this sprint, if our sprint is 1 month, we decided that we're working on the cover of the pen for 1 month, or maybe we believe that we can achieve it in 2 weeks. You determining it within the Scrum team. So a new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. Please note the statement. A new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. Please note. All the work necessary to achieve the product goal, including sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective, happen within the sprints. So these are your 4 Scrum events: sprint planning, daily Scrum or daily stand-up, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. I've already broken down how all this happens. And the container is the sprint. All those 4 events happen within the sprint. The sprint is not an event, it's a container for all the events. And then during the sprint, no changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. So during the sprint, you can take out a task from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. However, the task must not affect the sprint goal at all. So you can't make changes that will endanger the sprint goal. The sprint goal is to achieve the bottom of the pen this sprint. Whatever tickets or tasks you pick from the product backlog into the sprint goal within the sprint must not affect the sprint goal. Quality must not decrease. The product backlog is refined as needed. So the product backlog is not stationary. So occasionally, some ideas can pop up. You're allowed to put in the product backlog. During the sprint planning, you can review it, take it out if it's necessary, include it on the product backlog if necessary. But the product owner is aware of all this. Then scope may be clarified and renegotiated with the product owner as more is learned. So as you're working on a particular pen, you can now discover, or maybe say the ink of the pen, you now discover that there is a better way to achieve this. You can then put it forward. More is, so when we're not saying that the product backlog is so stationary that until we achieve the entire product, we won't make changes. You are allowed to make changes as more is learned. However, you don't make changes that affect the sprint goal. You can bring those changes during the sprint planning, or you can put it on the backlog. Usually, most firms use some tools like Jira or Trello for their backlog. Most of the time, Jira, so you can put it on the product backlog. And then at the next sprint planning, we can take a look at it and see if we should include it or remove it. Okay. Sprints enable predictability by ensuring inspection and adaptation of progress toward its product goal at least every calendar month. Okay. Okay, please note this. A sprint could be cancelled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. You will see this at least twice. A sprint could be cancelled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. So the sprint goal is no longer useful. It's no longer, we're not trying to achieve it a goal. So we can decide to end the sprint even within the sprint. So we decided that this pen, we're not going to put a cover to it, and maybe we're working on the cover for about a week. and the sprint is about 2 weeks, and we've been working on the cover, but new changes have been made. We've said that the pen will no longer have this cover, it will have an automatic cover, or maybe it will just go in and you won't need a pen where you have to separate, the cover where you have to separate from the pen. So we decided we are ending the sprint, we're canceling the sprint because we're no longer producing covers. The pen is no longer going to need a cover. Basically, that's what it means. And then only the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint. Just this line alone, you're looking at 4 or 5 questions. A sprint could be canceled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint. Okay, let's move to sprint planning. Sprint planning initiates the sprint by laying out the work to be performed for the sprint. The resulting plan is created by the collaborative work of the entire Scrum team. Okay, so I can't see the participants. Is Emmanuel in the room?
Present,
Is
ma'am.
Emmanuel around now? Okay.
I
You
sent you a
snuck in.
message. Good evening.
You snuck in. Good evening. Okay. I'll stop at 9 and then we can continue at another time. The sprint planning initiates the sprint by laying out the work to be performed for the sprint. This resulting plan is created by the collaborative work of the entire Scrum team. The product owner ensures that attendees are prepared to discuss the most important product backlog items and how they map to the product goal. The Scrum team may also invite other people to attend sprint planning to provide advice. So, like I said initially, the sprint planning starts the sprint. We come together, we determine what the sprint goal is, and then we take out items, tickets, or tasks, activities from the product backlog that will help us achieve the sprint goal. The Scrum team members are the ones involved in this sprint planning. However, they can invite other people for their advice. They don't have to be part of the sprint planning, but you are allowed to invite other people. So it might be a subject matter expert within the organization that understands a few things. And these people are not amongst the Scrum team members. They are allowed to join the sprint planning. You can seek advice for them. Okay, so the sprint planning addresses the following topics. Why is the sprint valuable? What can be done this sprint? And how will the chosen work get done? You need to note this: why, what, and how. The sprint goal, the product backlog items selected for the sprint, plus the plan for delivering them together. This is what I'm reading. This is super important. The sprint goal, the product backlog items selected for the sprint, plus the plan for delivering them are together referred to as the sprint backlog. The sprint goal, what are we doing this sprint? The product backlog items, what are the tasks we're taking from the product backlog into the sprint backlog in order to achieve the sprint goal, and the plan for delivering them, the activities involved in achieving those tasks are what are referred as the sprint goal. So the sprint goal is not just the cover of the pen. The sprint goal is the tasks that you would take from the product backlog to achieve the activities involved. Everything comprises of the sprint backlog. So we have a product backlog, we have the sprint backlog. We take items from the product backlog into the sprint backlog, and we state how we're going to achieve all these tasks that we have taken from the product backlog. And this is the sprint goal for this sprint. I hope I'm clear. I think a couple of questions have come up. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Okay. Please note, the sprint planning is time boxed to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. The sprint planning, please note, is very important. This time box, very important. The sprint planning is time boxed to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint, which means that if we're doing a 2-month sprint, our sprint planning will be a maximum of 4 hours. It could be less, but we're sticking to just this time box. It could be less, but it shouldn't exceed this time. So if what we're planning for is a 1 month sprint, 1 month stretch, then our sprint planning would take for 8 hours. It could be less. It doesn't have to be 8 hours, but it must not exceed 8 hours. So you calculate it according to the sprint. So if the sprint is 2 weeks, if what we're trying to achieve is within 2 weeks, then our sprint planning will be within 4 hours. If it's 1 week, our sprint planning will be within 2 hours. Should I take this daily Scrum or should I stop here, Emmanuel?
I think it'd be wonderful. Let's stop here so we don't overload everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stepping in at short notice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just quickly share my screen. Oops. Sorry, I need to be made a co-host, please.
Okay, Manuel, sorry about that.
No worries.
Done.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, boss. Now, let me just quickly do a quick round drop before Emmanuel starts. I want to make sure that everybody got something out of tonight's session. Can you type one word that you remember in tonight's session, please? One word that you got out of this session, especially the one that she keeps saying, please note, please note. I'm waiting, guys, so that Emmanuel can take over. Spring goal, thank you, Edmund. Chidera time box, okay, thank you. More people. Can we have a LinkedIn, please? I'll drop it for you. Frog, sprint is a container. Thank you, Uncle Fred. Not an event, indeed. More people. Did you guys get value? This thing, I called Olubusola just shortly. I'll drop a LinkedIn. And everybody, please connect with each other. I mean that. I don't know. Adebayo, please, does everybody fill their profile? Emmanuel, let me drop your LinkedIn as well.
Oh, okay, that's
Emmanuel.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Not everybody have filled it too.
Let's call out those that have not filled it and ask why, I beg. Not
All right.
call them out in shame, just to call them to encourage them, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I've dropped Emmanuel's LinkedIn. Please, if you are here to connect with me as well. Anyway, so thank you so much for all your feedback. Sprint value, thank you, product owner. Chidera, thank you. Now, the next question I want to ask, did you gain value from this session with Boost? Because Cohort 3 really appreciated what she did. If you did, let type Boost, B-U-S. Did you get value tonight? Thank you, Damilare. Thank you, Akidoi. Okay, thank you, Uncle Fred. You did boss. Boost. Thank you, Ekman. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Chidera. Okay, for those of you that did not type, obviously you didn't get value, Abby. There is God. Thank you, GC. Thank you so much. Thank you. Boss. It's boss. Thank you, Emmanuel, and over to you. But I'd like them to take a break at some point. Sola,
Actually,
I want to sincerely appreciate you, Posh Baby, like you and Emmanuel call each other. And they are both birthday mates, yeah? Two of them celebrated, they are both birthday mates.
Absolutely, yeah.
So last minute, we just called her and she stepped up. Had network issues, but both. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you so much, everyone.
I missed out on what you said.
Huh? I didn't hear what you said, Busola. Anyway, thank you so much. Emmanuel, over to you. Let's moderate them taking a break, at least digesting that before you go into
Absolutely.
another.
I was just going to bring the timer up to put 5 minutes, okay?